Welcome to Thinking Thoracic, the podcast dedicated to exploring the advancements in thoracic surgery. Brought to you by the Society of Thoracic Surgeons. This podcast features leading thoracic surgeons discussing and debating the latest research, surgical techniques, and trends to expand your knowledge, challenge your thinking, and help you stay ahead of the curve. Whether you're a thoracic surgeon, advanced practice provider, researcher, or industry professional, Thinking Thoracic is for you. Let's get started. The Society of Thoracic Surgeons Thinking Thoracic podcast is sponsored by AstraZeneca.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jane Yanagawa, and I'm your host for this episode of Thinking Thoracic and STS podcast. We have a special topic today about the most relevant American Board of Thoracic Surgery updates. And I'm really happy for all the thoracic surgeons who are tuning in, because I think what we have to share today, especially about the certification and continuing certification processes, could possibly save you a lot of pain. To educate us, I have the huge privilege to introduce Dr. John Mitchell, who is the Chief of Thoracic Surgery at the University of Colorado, as well as the current Vice Chair and incoming Chair of the ABTS. He's also generally very famous and in charge of a lot of things. Well, John, thank you for joining us today.
Jane, it's great to be here. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate right at the outset talking about the issues regarding certification, and particularly continuing certification, which are so important for all the diplomates.
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably represent a lot of thoracic surgeons out there for whom the ABTS is kind of a black box, that mostly we think of ABTS and we think of stressful tests, or we think of like, oh, I need to pay that money, but there's so much more to it. It would be really great if you could maybe even start by giving us a little bit of the history of the ABTS and the structure, and, for example, how to get involved, how you got involved.
Absolutely. So the ABTS was formed in 1948 from a group of surgeons that represented the AATS and the ABS. And for many years, it was a sub-board of the ABS, but in 1971, it became its own standalone board, joined the cadre of full-fledged boards and out from under the ABS umbrella. So that's where it stands today. The headquarters are in Chicago. The structure of the ABTS currently, you got involved by getting nominated by one of our societies. So the AATS or the STS or the ASA or similar societies would nominate individuals who would then be considered by the board and elected when a vacancy was present to be a director. More recently, the ABTS has gone to more of a competency-based election system where we look for people with specific skill sets that might augment the work of the board. There's certainly still nominations from the various societies, and that's critically important. But now there's also an enhanced route to self-nominate or be an at-large director that you nominate yourself and you go through the process. One of the things for people to realize is that if you are interested in working on the board, it's helpful to volunteer in board activities prior to trying to get on the board. So participating in the oral exams, writing questions for the participating in the TSDA, and writing questions for their in-training exam. All of those things are important and suggest an interest in joining the ABTS. One of the other things that's important to keep in mind is that the main function of the ABTS is to certify people in cardiothoracic surgery and assure to the public that they're safe and that they'll do a good job. So yes, there's a formalized certification process that involves both a qualifying exam and a certifying exam. But all of those exams need to be generated, and they're generated by the board members. And so back to getting on the board, it's important to keep a balance between adult cardiac, general thoracic, and congenital surgeons so the work of the board can be done. So typically now there's 4 or 5 adult cardiac surgeons, 4 general thoracic surgeons, 4 congenital surgeons. We have a public member, and we've been immensely lucky with the individuals that have served as public members, often with extensive governance and financial knowledge. We have a member from the ABS. So the ABS and the ABTS share directors or exchange directors. I was a director on the ABS, or a counselor on the ABS, for several years. And now Sandy Starnes, who's currently a director on the ABTS, is our representative on the ABS. Our ABS rep is an individual named Ash Mansour. He's a vascular surgeon in Michigan, a terrific individual. And as it turns out, he was a former chair of the ABS. So public member, ABS member, a balanced cadre of directors. And then we have an executive council that involves the chair. Our current chair is Mike Mack. I'm the vice chair. We have an exam chair, Mac DeCamp, which is an incredibly important role. Being the exam chair on the board is probably the busiest job on the board, coordinating all of the examination processes. And then Beth Weiner is our chief operating officer. And then finally, our executive director, or CEO, if you will, is Cam Wright. So the executive director serves also as a director, but is elected in a different process and serves for 7 years. And in Cam's case, he was a director and actually was the chair of the board about 10 years ago. So we have consideration of new members every spring and summer. It's all posted on the website, and if anyone is interested, they should look into that. And if a subspecialty specific opening is there, I would invite everyone to apply. I happened to be elected the board in, I think, 2017. Served my 6 years. It was extended by a year due to COVID, and then was elected vice chair 2 years ago. And then I'll become the chair this fall. So
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to check that out and get involved after this episode.
Yeah, I should assure everyone that Jane's certification is in good standing, at least for now. Yeah.
I know, I was worried about that. Okay, well, let's get to talking about certification and recertification, because I think that's something that everyone really wants to know the details about. Some of it can be a little bit confusing. Can you talk about sort of the basics of the certification and maybe updates having to do that, and then same for continuing certification?
Yeah, and Jane and I were talking about this before the recording started, but the certification process, the original primary certification, it is reasonably straightforward, and it's something that all graduating CT residents know very well. And after you graduate in the summer, you typically apply to to take the qualifying exam. That's a multiple choice exam that's held in December, and it's done at a Pearson testing center. And the topics that are covered are posted on the ABTS website. So there's no mystery about what's going to be on it. There's 125 cardiac questions, 125 general thoracic questions. And you take the test, and then you find out in January if you pass the qualifying exam. The qualifying exam is mostly about knowledge. You are asked questions and you either know it or you don't. The second part, though, is the certifying exam, and that's the so-called oral exam. And that functions to test a person's ability to think and manage common cardiothoracic problems. So the format of that's now held in Dallas at a testing center in early June. And during the pandemic, we went to virtual for a year or two, but have gone back to in-person oral exams because we feel it's a better way to test individuals and assess their knowledge and skills. So you go to Dallas. The content of the oral exam is as follows. You go into 3 rooms. It takes 90 minutes, so 30 minutes a room. And you in each room, you answer 4 oral questions or scenarios. And the rooms are set up such that one room is just general thoracic. So there's 2 general thoracic examiners asking you 4 thoracic questions. The second room is the same, only adult cardiac. And the third is a mixed room, which has both cardiac and thoracic questions and 1 examiner from each. So you take those 12 oral scenarios, and after that, you're done. And whether you pass or not is posted on your portal on the ABTS website, usually within a week or so of the exam. So that's how that works. One of the things that we've tried to do within the ABTS is make the questions for the oral exam more real life, more like things that you would see in your practice. A few years ago, we did a task analysis and actually asked people, what sort of things do you do? Because everybody knows about atrial myxomas, but you hardly ever see one. And I could come up with a similar-ish, question in general thoracic. So we looked at what do people do? And then we've based our oral exam questions largely on the task analysis. So we're asking real world scenarios that you might see in your practice every day. I think that's super important. It's not trying to trick you. It's just, tell us how you would manage this patient. So after you pass the oral exam or the CE, the certification exam, you're issued a certificate from the board. All of the certificates are the same, whether you're a cardiac surgeon, a thoracic surgeon, a mixed practice surgeon. There's a separate exam for congenital. So if you go through a second residency in congenital heart surgery, you go through a similar process to obtain that certificate. That's how it works, Jane.
And then I think you mentioned too how you guys spent a lot of time really even thinking about the structure, that there have been considerations of using different methods other than the 12 cases. That's the case right now, but there have been like other things that have been investigated too. So there's a lot of work and thought going into even keeping it the way it is right now.
Yeah, that's right. One of the things we do is always ask ourselves, how could we conduct the examination in an even better manner? And so the answer to that comes in several parts. One is generating questions for the qualifying exam, the multiple choice questions. That's fairly laborious, and we get, if you think about it, question writers are writing questions for the in-training exam, for continuing certification. When we used to do CSATs, which people want us to revive, those are questions. And then obviously the qualifying exam. It's a lot of questions. And you might think that we just throw it out there and come up with 3 answers and say, there you go. But a lot of time and a lot of energy is put into every question, and it's reviewed and reviewed and reviewed. Not only the qualifying exam, but the oral exam questions too. We've started to utilize AI to help us with question writing. The ABTS developed a proprietary AI engine or process to write multiple choice questions. So it's still kind of getting off the ground, but it's an amazing tool. And I think that we will use it more and more in the months ahead. The thing you were referring to, Jane, is the oral exam. So when you take an oral exam, in the end, there's 12 scenarios, and you can have facets of each scenario, but it's a limited assessment of your total knowledge base. How could it not be? One of the things that we explored in the past is an alternate technique it was entitled Key Features. It was pushed by Ara Vaportian, who knows more about education than Jane and I ever will. But he went on the board. We explored the possibility of using a key features exam. It's used up in Canada and some other areas, and it basically asks more questions and does more of a deep dive into an individual's management strategy, their knowledge base, and things like that. There are more touch points during an exam like that. And so the idea would be it's a more reasonable assessment of your overall knowledge base and management skills. So in the end, we've decided to not use key features for the time being, but may pick it up in the future.
Well, it's like really nice to hear that there's so much thought going into making it more, in general, real life and reasonable. I thought of another thing. Some of our audience members, maybe those who haven't been certified yet, might wonder what happens if you don't pass.
Yeah, so if you don't pass, you take it again. If you that's true both for the qualifying exam and the certifying exam. After a certain number of tries, if you fail, then usually we explore a remediation pathway for individuals. So that might involve some additional training or shadowing with a more senior cardiothoracic surgeon. That sort of paradigm is usually worked out in conjunction with the executive director, in this case, Dr. Wright. So a plan is generated, and then at the completion of that, the person is eligible to again enter the exam process.
Also, I'm just thinking that we might even have listeners who are outside of this country. Is it possible for people in other countries to be certified by ABTS?
So we have an alternate pathway that allows entry for individuals like that. But the qualifications to enter the alternate pathway, they're on the website, and I can't recite them off the top of the head, but they're typically for individuals that are quite accomplished. If you're a congenital heart surgeon from England who's world famous, and you come over and work at CHOP, and you're not board certified in the US, but you're obviously eminently qualified. It's for individuals like that in general. And the applications and the entry into that sort of pathway is considered on a case-by-case basis. So if there are individuals that are interested in that, I would direct them to the ABTS website to explore whether they would be a candidate.
Cool. Let's talk about continuing certification. For some people, they think that it's just like every 10-year thing to deal with. Can you give us an update on what's going on with continuing certification?
Yes, and in fact, this is the single most important thing we'll talk about because it affects all of our diplomates, all of our coworkers that currently hold certificates. So it used to be that, after you passed, you'd be given a 10-year certificate. And at 5 years, you had to do MOC, which is typically CSATs, but that's an at-home, zero stress event that you just had to get through. And then every 10 years, you would take an exam again. But changes have been pushed by the ABMS, where they want continuing certification cadence to be more frequent than every 10 years. And some boards, as everybody knows, have gone to even more frequent than what we've done. The ABS does an every other year cadence for their continuing certification. The ABTS chose 5 years, which was the max allowed by the ABMS. So instead of having a 10-year and the MOC paradigm, we now have an exam that's done every 5 years. So, and right now, because those changes went into effect a year or two ago, there's a large cadre of individuals that are going from the 10-year paradigm to the 5-year paradigm. And I'm actually one of them. I think my 10-year certificate is up in 2028, and I will enter the 5-year cycle. So this is super important because it's a change from before. And it used to be that people would pass and then forget about the board until they got a lot of nasty emails or something to that effect saying you're about to expire, and lose your certificate, and then you would enter. I would encourage everyone to look at the ABTS website at least once a year and see where they are in their continuing certification cycle. So it's every 5 years. You can take the exam at 4 years if you so choose, or your 5th year. There's even a grace year if needed. Okay. Sometimes people have medical issues or something else that prohibits if you wait till your 5th year and then you have a family emergency or something. That's what the grace year is for. But nobody wants to let their certification lapse, because if you get beyond 6 years, it ups the ante towards getting your certification reestablished, if you will. You will be listed as not certified, and you will need to take the QE and the CE again. And if you've been out for 20 years doing cardiac surgery, answering questions about immunotherapy and lung cancer is not something you want to probably do. So it pays to stay current on your continuous certification. So the exam for that is modular, and it is tailored to your practice. So Jane would take an exam tailored to general thoracic surgery. So you want to avoid getting into that lapsed category, and you need to do all the other things that you would normally do, but at the end, take it on time, and almost certainly you will pass. It is a low stakes exam, and it's in your subspecialty, so people will do well. There's a couple other things I wanted to say about continuing certification. Number one, you get CME credit. You get 60 CMEs for doing it. So it's not trivial. And the other thing is we're always looking at the continuing certification and trying to make it as relevant as possible. So typically it's 100 questions, and they're multiple choice questions, but we have a pilot that's being started or will be imminently in the congenital realm, where they're going to replace some of the MCQs with reading relevant journal articles and then answering questions. So you can see, the whole point of continuing certification is to keep physicians and surgeons up to date in their specialty. So, we're going to start with, X number of articles plus the rest in MCQs. And over time, the hope is to expand the article number and reduce the MCQ number that are standalone MCQs to make the exam more relevant for practicing surgeons. And if it works well in congenital, it will definitely come to cardiac and thoracic. So I think it's a terrific idea. Adil Hussein is on the board, and he is heading this pilot, but I think it'll be successful.
That's awesome. It's essentially an open book exam. And do you know how many hours it takes usually for people to complete the exam?
Well, currently it's 100 questions, so I would guess 2 or 3 hours. Not too onerous. I think when it comes to reading the journal articles, and the articles, by the way, are selected by in this case, for the pilot, the congenital directors. They're going to be relevant articles that you need to know about in your practice. So there's no trickery involved. It's just stuff you should already know anyways.
I think the key takeaway is that you don't want to miss your expiration date. And so it sounds like the main ways to follow up on that is you can probably check on your own deadlines on the ABTS website, and then getting these emails. I think that led to something else that we were talking about before, which is that, even if they're nasty emails, we're probably very grateful for the information in them. The only problem is that sometimes if people move their jobs or change their emails and things like that, that can make it difficult for the ABTS to send you those emails and those ultimately like really kind reminders. So that is something that people should do, right? Go on the website and update their email and contact information anytime those change.
Absolutely. And if you don't do anything else, make sure your contact information is up to date. And I want to correct the emails and the certified letters are not nasty. The person who does that, Manoli, is literally a saint in my view. It's a thankless job to hunt people down, and she does it to keep all the diplomates certified. And she is a wonderful human being. And if you have any questions about your certification status, I would encourage you to call Manoli at the ABTS office, and she will help you. The ABTS does everything it can. And in fact, it's incredible the lengths they go to try to contact individuals and the databases that they scour to get up-to-date addresses, phone numbers, job locations, all in the spirit of keeping people certified.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she does a great job. But anyways, if you don't take anything else from this webinar, or podcasts, please know that keep your information up to date. Go to the website, see all the stuff that you need to see, and it will be simple.
Great. Well, the scope of ABTS, having talked to you about it a little bit already, is actually really huge, though, that we talk a lot about certification, recertification, but, there are also initiatives having to do with professionalism and training and things like that. Can you let us know about some of the other projects that you're working on?
Yep. Yeah. So the ABTS is always thinking how can things be made better for the diplomates, and how can the training process be refined to produce better cardiothoracic surgeons. So in no apparent order, the ABTS is undergoing a modernization process. We've hired some new people, and we're replacing our management software. We're redoing our website. We're updating our database, all in the spirit of making things better for the diplomates. So that's ongoing through 2026. And Beth Weiner and Cam Wright have been overseeing that and been doing a great job to modernize aspects of the ABTS to the diplomates' benefit. The ABS promotes or sponsors or has initiated multiple endeavors that I want to mention. One, it will be familiar to many of the current trainees and the program directors. It's the Pulse 360 program that was instituted and funded by the ABTS for current residents, where they basically do a 360 evaluation twice during their residency to enhance professionalism, unmask any communication flaws or other issues that might help the individuals as they go through training become better CT surgeons. So we just finished the first year of that. It's a 3-year project, but it was headed and has been headed by Tor Sunt at the MGH, and this was initiated when Tor was a director. But we think it's a very important program and beneficial to the residents in training. Along those lines, the ABTS is sponsoring and helping pay for a director's program that's going to be held later this summer in conjunction with the STS boot camp. And the basic idea is to have program directors come and have the agenda cover, all the salient features, the communication between the program directors and the ABTS and the RRC and the TSDA. It's co-sponsored by the TSDA. And I think it's a great addition, particularly for new program directors. The turnover in program directors is probably higher than we would like to see. And to have a program like this, I think, to get people off on the right track is really terrific. A big effort that the ABTS has initiated in the last year or two are the generation of EPAs in CT surgery, or entrustable professional activities. So anybody who goes through a general surgery program knows about these, and these were developed, when I was on the ABS, and then they were started into training and actual use. I think in 2023 or so. And I think are generally viewed to be helpful when evaluating residents. We are doing a similar thing in cardiothoracic surgery. This is another mandate from the ABMS regarding competency-based medical education. And so the EPAs in CT surgery, there are 7, 3 cardiac, CABG, mitral, aortic operations. And then in thoracic, it's lung cancer, esophageal cancer, and interestingly, paraesophageal hernia. which there are more of those done than you would think, Jane. So, and then the seventh one is a consultation EPA. So the ABTS contracted with an app developer called Firefly, which a lot of the at least ABS subboards use. The concept of EPAs is spread to all of the subboards within the ABS, vascular, complex surgical oncology, et cetera. And now we have interacted with the Firefly individuals, and we have a pilot that's just wrapping up regarding the EPAs at 9 or 10 sites. But the EPAs for CT surgery are going to roll out this fall. And they don't replace milestones. They provide additional information about a resident's progress as they move through the training paradigm at each institution. And people that utilize them all the time, particularly in general surgery, feel that they really facilitate the CCC meetings and the evaluations of the residents during that process. So I think for people who train CT residents, you're going to have an app on your phone, just like your general surgery colleagues. And you're going to, at the end of the case, enter in the specific trainee's name and the case and talk about what went well and what could have gone better and so forth. And over time, people will go from being neophytes within that system to completely practice ready.
Yeah. As someone who works with the general surgery residents a lot already, as it's very easy. Some of the issues we've had is even with residents initiating them, like sometimes being worried that their faculty members, that it's a burden for them or they won't want to do them. But, I've realized that you don't even have to wait for them. You can initiate the feedback and just send it directly to the residents. So they don't even have to send you the request. The app is so easy to use. You just open it on your phone and you can do it in like 2 minutes. I think it's the same among general surgery and cardiothoracic surgery residents, but it's almost a wellness issue because so much of the stress of the job is like not knowing how you're doing. Especially the younger generations, that they just need more feedback. And I think it's a really important thing that is easy to do, that definitely everyone should get used to doing.
Well, that's good to hear. So my hope is, Jane, that we can get going on EPAs and CT surgery and not run into too many speed bumps along the way. But it helps. The ABS experience definitely helps smooth that out a little bit. So the last thing I'd say about EPAs is the EPA effort is headed by Steve Yang, who was a longtime board member and exam chair for the ABTS and now is working as a consultant. And he's really done a terrific job in getting this off the ground. So kudos to him. In a similar vein, we're also exploring, and this is fascinating, the use of video assessment in resident training. And so is there a way to film or use video to assess the fluidity and the economy of motion doing certain repetitive tasks as a surrogate, if you will, for someone's progress throughout the training? There is a NIH funded project. It's headed by Joe Deraney, also a former chair of the board. And he at the Mayo, along with folks at the University of Michigan, and I think Edinburgh, are looking at this. And they're initially doing this with respect to doing a coronary anastomosis. And you can imagine watching someone's hands, in their first month trying to do that versus watching the attending do it. And they're working out the kinks and the details about how to evaluate that objectively. So but I think it would be terrific if in the future we could have a process during the training to quantify how individuals are doing, because surgery is a physical sport, as you know firsthand, and the ability to do things smoothly without a lot of excess motion and so forth is important. And in a similar vein, in thoracic surgery, there's no shortage of videos, right, in the robotic world about how we do things and how a resident can progress through a case. So that's the idea. It's still kind of, in its infancy, but it will be fascinating to see how that develops.
Yeah, I think that's going to make a lot of sense for upcoming generations because, like you were saying, they're so used to watching videos for their learning, but also recording, in robotic cases and reviewing and learning from those videos. I see a lot of residents even incorporating videos into their M&M presentations. Reviewing videos has become really normal for them. So I think that's a great initiative. Makes a lot of sense.
Well, just a couple other things I wanted to mention, Jane. One is the ABTS came up with a professionalism statement or a code of conduct statement, and it's on the website. It's easy to read, and most of it is as you would expect. You can't cheat on the exams, or bad things will happen, and you can't. But importantly, if you're a diplomate out in practice, if your license runs into issues, your state license, you need to let the board know. If you get arrested in a felony or something like that, you need to let the board know. If you have your Medicare eligibility, to take privileges, to take patients, things like that, or anything like that, you need to let the board know. If you get fired from your job, you probably should let the board know. The point is that to keep the board updated about any adverse events in your life that might affect your certificate, and you can't lose your license and then let them know 2 years later. You need to let them know within a month or two. I think the deadline is 3 months, but sooner the better.
That's a great way to end the episode. But I think in summary, the critical takeaways, well, check out the website. I think that has come up so many times, right? Check out the website. Make sure your contact info is up to date. Do not let your certification expire. And it sounds like ABTS is your friend. You can reach out for help, and that there's all these people and work and money going into making our lives better and easier, us and our patients. So thank you so much for coming on board and shedding this light on the ABTS for us. I'll try to get involved, and hopefully some of our audience members will be inspired too also.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
To our amazing listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have enjoyed the conversation, please be sure to follow Thinking Thoracic on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Your support helps us to continue to grow, improve, and to bring you the most insightful conversations. And if you have a moment, we'd love for you to leave a rating or review. It really makes a difference. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Thinking Thoracic. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Society of Thoracic Surgeons.